Hey, everybody. Welcome into the podcast. We are back with another special bonus episode. Brad, these are our last 2 episodes of season 3. Can you believe it?
Bob, I am so pumped for this. This has become just such a beautiful tradition for this podcast.
Yeah.
To just throw movies into the fiery furnace from whence they came.
Yes. For those of you who are not familiar with what we're doing today, at the end of each of our seasons are 32 episodes long so that we can put the movies into a nice, even madness-style bracket. And we can crown the victor, the winner of each season, based on, sheer luck and chance in some ways. But what we do is we put all these movies into a bracket, and Brad and I go pick by pick. And we eliminate some movies from existence. That's our criteria. When you have 2 movies facing off against each other to determine which is the better film, ultimately what you have to ask yourself is, can I handle either of these movies being thrown into the fiery furnace, never to be seen again? And usually that helps me make my choices a little bit easier, Brad.
Yeah, it gives a little bit of credence to your choice to say, man, I'm never going to watch this movie again in my life. So, how am I going to deal with that when I make this choice? And Bob, I'm pretty sure you've never watched any movie that we've thrown in the fiery furnace again, have you?
Oh, never, Brad. I would never go back on our promise to eliminate those movies from existence.
I appreciate it. I've heard that there's a few that you've kind of liked in there, and so I'm glad to hear that you're sticking strong.
Absolutely.
That you're really committed to this podcast.
So the way we set our bracket up is at the end of each season, we go through and look at the scores that we averaged out on each film, and I rank those from 1 to 32. But we also do something else. We each look at the list of 32 films at the end of the season, independent of each other and independent of our scores, and just based on our own hearts and gut feeling, Brad ranks his from 1 to 32. I rank mine from 1 to 32. We take all 3 of those lists, average them out together based on the score they'd be given, and we put them into the bracket. And so, Brad, I cannot wait to get into eliminating some of these films and crowning the champion of our Season 3 Film and Whiskey bracket. And Brad, as we get into this today, we are going to be sipping on 2 whiskeys from a company called Lucky 7. We'll share more about that company in a little while, but one of the amazing things they did when they sent us a bottle of whiskey to review is they also sent us these really beautiful bronze coins bearing their own logo. And I looked at Brad when we got this in the mail and I said, my God, we have coins of destiny. So what we do on the Film and Whiskey podcast, when Brad and I are at odds on what to move on in the bracket, we have to flip a coin. We jokingly referred to these as the coin of destiny in the past. But now Brad and I are each equipped with a Lucky 7 coin of destiny that will help determine the future of this bracket. So Brad, we have our movies ranked 1 through 32. What do you say we get started with our elimination challenge? Starting in the upper left quadrant, we have our number 1 overall seed, It's a Wonderful Life, up against the 32 seed, Bohemian Rhapsody. Brad, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Bob, I'm just gonna cut you off right now. Bohemian Rhapsody is a garbage movie for garbage people, and it can go rotten hell.
I completely agree, Brad. That movie sucks, and it sucks a lot, and I'm kind of upset that we even watched it, and it can go die a fiery death. So moving on from that one, It's a Wonderful Life is in the Sweet 16. That was the easiest and quickest elimination we've ever had.
I think that we will ever have for at any point. Even Back to the Future, which we had a lot of problems with, I would probably choose that over Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, any day of the week.
Any day.
All right, well, that takes us to a much more difficult matchup right in the middle of our rankings. This is the number 16 overall seed, The Social Network, up against the number 17 overall seed, The Departed. Brad, I like both these movies, and I think that as we talked about each of them in our episodes on them, they aren't perfect movies to me, and I think both of them are a little bit overhyped. But at the end of the day, I think The Social Network is the better made film, and I moved The Social Network on.
Bob, we moved from the easiest decision ever to what turned out to be a much harder decision than I thought it would be. These 2 movies are very, very different, and yet, I don't know, there's almost a certain vibe to them. There's a certain similarity in what you have going on in the films. And I really struggled for a while, and I ended up choosing The Departed.
Oh.
Just simply based on a few little things of, I just like the story a little bit better. I I enjoy the characters in the movie. But I'm not going to lie, Bob. I almost chose The Social Network as well. And I really am okay with this being a coin of destiny flip.
Yeah, I agree, Brad. And to be 100% honest with you, the winner of this matchup is going to face It's a Wonderful Life in the Sweet 16. And if I know either of us, I don't really think the winner of this matchup is going any farther than this anyway. So at this point, it's just kind of like, let's flip this coin and see what happens. Brad, why don't you do the honors? We'll do heads, Social Network, tails, The Departed, to see what movie survives the fiery furnace. Brad, flip that coin.
Bob, it looks like The Social Network is moving on.
All right. You're welcome, David Fincher.
That's right. Honestly, I'm not upset about that. I would say that it's the better written movie for sure. Mm-hmm. And I do love the performances there. So I think it's very worthy of moving on.
All right. So there's our first 2 entries into the Sweet 16. Moving down this list, Brad, like the funniest occurrence happened when we averaged out all of our rankings to see how these things would line up in terms of the bracket and what seeding they would get. The 2 Harry Potter movies that we watched this year are squared off against each other here in the first round. We have the number 9 seed, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, up against the number 24 seed, The Goblet of Fire. Brad, we went in extensively on both of these movies in our episodes on them. I think we both agree that The Prisoner of Azkaban is a film that is made by a true master filmmaker, and it is apparent how much more amateurish The Goblet of Fire seems in comparison. And yet, for both of us, The Goblet of Fire seemed to have more sentimental value. So, like, this was kind of a no-brainer decision for me, but it also really hurt my heart to do it because I like the thematic content of Goblet of Fire better. But at the end of the day, I had to throw the Goblet of Fire into the fire and choose The Prisoner of Azkaban here.
We should probably purchase a Goblet of Fire and like throw our actual Blu-ray copies of movies into it. That seems like the obvious choice.
This just seems like something you want me to do because we all know I'm the only one that owns the Blu-rays. So.
I think you're the only human being to own like any physical copies of anything anymore.
It's still, dude, I'm telling you, it's still worthwhile.
I believe it, man. The Office is like leaving Netflix.
Yeah, man.
Like,
every time this stuff happens, people are like, they bitch and moan. And I'm like, if you just bought the freaking things, you'd have them forever.
I mean, at this point, you paid $12 a month for Netflix for how many years?
Exactly.
Like, you easily could have bought The Office.
So anyway, Brad,
right.
what's moving on and what's getting thrown in the furnace here?
Yeah, Prisoner is obviously moving on here. It is the by far superior film. There's a lot of beautiful stuff in Goblet of Fire, but it's just a messy, messy movie. Easy choice here.
And Brad, I think we have another easy choice ahead of us here for our 4th entry into the Sweet 16. We have the number 8 movie, Psycho, up against our number 25 seed, Mary Poppins. I enjoyed Mary Poppins more this time than maybe I ever have when I was watching it with a more critical eye. But Brad, it just doesn't hold a candle to what Hitchcock did in the movie Psycho. So for me, this was a really easy call. Psycho is moving on to the Sweet 16 for me.
Take a spoonful of sugar, Mary Poppins, because your movie sucks.
Boom.
Yeah, Psycho, for as much as I do not enjoy horror films very much, this one definitely falls in the realm of suspense. I loved it. It was fascinating. You get to see where so many of those horror tropes come from in this one film. Hitchcock is a master filmmaker. Easy choice right here.
All right, Brad. Well, that quadrant is all done. The 4 that are moving on to the Sweet 16 are It's a Wonderful Life, The Social Network, The Prisoner of Azkaban, and Psycho. And that takes us to our bottom left quadrant, starting with the number 4 overall seed, The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, up against the number 29 seed, Paul Haggis's Crash. Brad, I don't think this one's going to be that much of a challenge for us either. We both really liked the movie Crash, but couldn't quite understand why it became the phenomenon that it did, and the fact that it really hasn't held up too well over the last 15 years. For me, this is a no-brainer. Fellowship of the Ring is the vastly superior movie here.
Yeah, Bob, Fellowship of the Ring. I'm not going to say anything else. Crash is fine, and Fellowship is mind-bogglingly good. So,
all right, that takes us to a much more difficult matchup. The number 13 overall seed, Sicario, up against the number 20 overall seed, Life of Pi. Brad, these movies almost bookended our season. Life of Pi was, I think, like the second or third movie we did this season. Sicario was, I believe, next to last. So we're talking recency bias here. I just watched Sicario, and it's been quite a while since we've watched The Life of Pi. However, Life of Pi has always been a movie that has meant more to me. And I think that ending where they really get into, the nature of good and evil and all these things still means so much to me. I was shocked to see you rank it as low as you did in your rankings, Brad, and that's actually what gave this movie the number 20 overall seed as opposed to a higher seed. So what is it about Life of Pi, looking back on it now, Brad, that just isn't sticking with you as much as something else?
As I was looking back over my list, I ranked this at 26. I think maybe I could have ranked it a little bit higher in the 18 to 22 range, especially looking at the movies I had in that area.
Because I think you gave it an 8.5, right? Out of 10.
Yeah. I think that was the problem, is that the movie was just fine. It didn't stick with me a ton. And since we watched it so early in the season, when it came down to ranking these things, I just kind of left myself in a place where I was like, well, I kind of remember Life of Pi. There's this tiger, and it was a metaphor about this orangutan and evil, and his family died, and it was good, I guess. And so I kind of put it at 26 and thought it was fine. Whereas Sicario, I think I could easily 3 or 4 years from now, you could ask me what Sicario was about, and I would be like, oh yeah, it's Emily Blunt, and she has this awesome opportunity in front of her, and then she just gets wrecked by this CIA task force, and it's brutal, and they're fighting the cartel, and it's intense, and I loved it.
So that to say, Brad, I actually also chose Sicario to move on to the next round. But I wanted to give props to Life of Pi before we send it off, adrift at sea forever, because I think it's a really good movie. And if it had been ranked differently and not in this particular matchup, I could see it having moved on farther than it did.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. Life of Pi, from what I remember, is a really quality film, well made. Ang Lee really, really did a great job there. Just hasn't stuck with me as much.
All right, Brad. Well, we're moving on to our next matchup, which is the number 12 overall seed, Die Hard, up against the number 21 overall seed, No Country for Old Men. Brad, almost immediately after we recorded our No Country episode, I started thinking more and more deeply about that movie. And it has been one of those films that, even though I've seen it many times, I just can't shake it. And part of it is because there are little things that are just nuisances to me in this film. Some of the directorial decisions, I know they're making them for artistic purposes. I don't think they work. And yet I also think that overall, the totality of that movie is just so towering and so overwhelming. And I don't think I gave it a high enough score. And the more I think about it, the more I am just falling in love with that movie. I actually chose this movie to go on to the next round over Die Hard.
Well, first off, that's a silly take. But second off, what I really want to know is who would win in just a no holds barred, any weapon you want, any setting you want battle between Chigurh and John McClane. That
oh, dude,
is the
Anton
battle
Chigurh, hands down. I would rather watch Chigurh against Hans Gruber. I think that would be the better matchup.
Yeah, bad guy against bad guy. That's boring. I want to see John McClane just wreck Chigurh's plans.
All right.
I think that would be an easy choice.
All right, Brad. Well, I am going to flip my coin of destiny to see which movie moves on to the next round. Die Hard will be heads. No Country for Old Men will be tails. Let's do it. Brad. Die Hard moves on to the next round.
Yeah, it is. I knew it.
So I've taken my first L in this round of 16. Brad, is your bracket still impeccable?
No, I lost to the Social Network.
Oh, that's
earlier.
right. That's right. All right.
That was my first loss.
So we've both got blemishes on our track record here, and we have one more to go on this side of the bracket. And that would be our number 5 overall seed, North by Northwest, up against the number 28 seed, East of Eden. I don't really need to say much about this, Brad. North by Northwest is way better, and it very easily moves on for me to face off against Die Hard in the next round.
Yeah, North by Northwest. It's interesting. Once again, like, we had the two Harry Potters against each other, and now we have two films filmed in a similar era facing off against one another. Unfortunately for James Dean and his, debut performance, it's just not strong enough to beat out, at the top of his game, Cary Grant working with a top of his game, Alfred Hitchcock.
No, not at all. All right, Brad, so we have our 4 from this part of the bracket. Fellowship of the Ring, Sicario, Die Hard, and North by Northwest are all moving on to the round of 16. It's time for us to take a break. What do you say we try this first whiskey from Lucky 7?
Let's get to it.
All right, so today we are checking out whiskey from Lucky 7. Now, this is a non-distilling producer, meaning they source all their whiskey. They are based out of Bardstown, Kentucky. I do not know exactly where they're getting their whiskey from. It could be that they're having some sort of mash bill made for them at Bardstown Bourbon Company. Who's to say? I don't think that's the case, though, because what we have in the bottle here today, Brad, is what they call their hold-up line of whiskey. There's 3 different expressions, and they're all based on kind of old-timey movie tropes. It's really cool. If you get a look at the bottle, there's this sticker on it that's shaped like an old movie ticket. When you peel it off, it reveals a QR code, which when you scan, they've made a short film for each of their expressions of whiskey. It's really, really fun to watch. These guys are super into film. When I was talking with them on Instagram, they said that another one of their lines, the Jokester, was actually inspired by the scene in Goodfellas where Joe Pesci does the, am I here to amuse you? You think I'm funny? I'm a funny guy. And I just thought it was so cool that they would start a whole line of whiskey based on that one scene. It's a beautiful package. It is a premium whiskey. It costs quite a bit. But Brad, we're not here to review the price. We're here to review the whiskey. And as we have it in front of us here, what are you picking up on the nose?
It's a little bit alcohol forward, but underneath that, you get a little bit of a fruity flavor coming up in the aroma. I think you get a little bit of oak there. It's a really, really nice nose that I'm hoping that ethanol doesn't hit too hard because it seems like there's some great flavors coming through.
Yeah, I'm getting quite a bit of brown sugar and maple. And then underneath that, there's quite a bit of nut in this for me too. Like there's definitely a peanut buttery, like just a slight hint of peanut butter in this to me as well. This is a 100 proof whiskey that has been aged for 12 years. So we should have quite a bit of oak character on this, I would imagine. And Brad, I'm a big fan of this so far. This is right in my wheelhouse in terms of what kind of nose I like on a whiskey. It's reminding me of some of the better, Henry McKenna's that we had. So I'm excited to give it a try. Let's sip it.
Whew. Wow, Bob, that is a really nice, smooth 100 proof whiskey. It's a little bit thinner than I kind of expected it to be. There's a little bit of nuttiness, a little bit of oakiness. I'm not really getting any of that fruit that I thought I smelled that I maybe didn't smell. Who's to say? But it's a really nice, smooth. If anything, I'm just gonna say it feels a little bit underpowered. I feel like it could use a little bit more punch to it.
That's really funny because I'm having almost the opposite experience on my end, Brad. I actually think that this is incredibly oak forward. The 12 years is really standing out in this. It's oak and it's black pepper, like all the way for me. I was really expecting more of those baking spices to come out here, or perhaps some of that maple flavor. But this one, it doesn't stay really sweet on the palate. Like there's a little bit of sweetness to it, but what ultimately overtakes it is that really heavy punch of oak that I'm getting towards the back of my palate. I actually think this is like a turbocharged 100 proof whiskey. And, you and I have talked a lot about how sometimes the bottled and bond or 100 proof varieties of whiskey can almost come across as more alcohol forward than whiskeys that actually have more alcohol in them at barrel proof. There's just something about this range that depending on your palate, it just hits different sometimes. And this is one of those whiskeys that definitely packs more of a punch for me.
Yeah, Bob, I really like the flavors that are going on here. I think Lucky 7 is onto something. And the more I sip on this, the more I really am appreciating those oak tones that just really hover on your palate well. I feel like a lot of other distilleries struggle to balance out a heavy oak palate, but Lucky 7 seems to have done it well.
Yeah, I completely agree, Brad. And I'm really excited because later in the episode, we're going to try another one of their expressions, the Jokester, which is only a 6-year age statement. So I'm excited to see the differences that the aging in these barrels that they've bought might have. But before we get to that, let's jump back into our bracket and knock some more movies out of existence. What do you say?
Let's get to it.
All right, Brad. So starting on the right side of our bracket, we have our number 2 overall seed, Citizen Kane, up against the number 31 seed, Babe. I'm going to be honest, Brad, I do not like Babe. I think I was probably, less harsh than I wanted to be because our fans picked it for us to watch. I did not enjoy that movie. I don't think it's good, and I am happy to make bacon out of that pig.
Bob, all I have in my head is an image of Orson Welles just staring menacingly down towards the floor, and then there's a camera shot behind him, and you just see Babe the pig, staring at him lovingly as he, takes him off to the slaughterhouse. He, berates the pig. Yes. Yeah, he doesn't even kill the pig. He's just yelling at it.
I'm Charles Foster Kane!
Yeah. Let's throw Kane on and move on to the next movie.
All right. We have our number 15 overall seed, Toy Story, up against the 18 seed, Shutter Island. Brad, this was a harder matchup than I thought it would be. And people might not think that because Toy Story is iconic, and I understand all that. But I think we both agreed that the first Toy Story film is not the one that either one of us would choose as the best Toy Story film. And I think because of that, it really opened this door for Shutter Island, which I still think is an incredibly underrated genre exercise by Martin Scorsese. Brad, which one did you choose to move on here?
I actually picked Shutter Island.
Wow, okay.
I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, Toy Story. And then as I went to write it down, I was like, but Shutter Island was so good. And I started thinking about it, and I thought about the ending of Shutter Island, and I just really love that movie. I want to go back again and watch it sometime soon. That's how much I enjoyed it. And so I think I just had to choose Shutter Island.
Brad, I ultimately did come down on the side of Toy Story, which means this is another toss-up, and we need to flip the coin of destiny to decide if Woody and Buzz will ever escape that incinerator. All right, so Brad, I'm going to let you flip your coin of destiny this time. Toy Story will be heads, Shutter Island tails. Brad, flip that coin.
All right, Bob, Toy Story is a movie that you will never watch again.
Wow.
Shutter Island is moving on.
Shutter Island. All right. Well, that was a huge upset. I mean, maybe not. It was only a 3-spot difference in our rankings, but...
and that is a hard one for me.
It's hard.
I love Toy Story.
I do too. And now we'll never get to hear Randy Newman sing "You've Got a Friend in Me" again. So thanks a lot, jerk.
You'll be missed, Randy.
All right, Brad. This takes us to one of the more controversial ones, I think, because it is pitting This Is Spinal Tap, which is our number 10 seed, against Braveheart, the number 23 overall seed. And Brad, here's why it's controversial. We have never had a movie that you and I have both given a 10 out of 10 fall this low in our ultimate rankings. And that is because when you filled out your by the heart, by the gut version of this ranking system, you put Spinal Tap way down at, I think, number 26 or something on the season. And I have to ask you, man, is your memory just that short term that you just don't remember liking this movie so much? Because it really was jarring for me to see a film that you had given a perfect score to this far down your list.
Well, I will say, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage here because I have never gotten to see your by the heart list. So I don't even know where you put, a movie lower than it deserved. I will say I put This Is Spinal Tap at my number 20 movie out of 32.
Oh, okay. I thought it was lower than that. All right.
And in the end, for me, I just feel like This Is Spinal Tap it's a movie it's out on its own wavelength. You know what I mean? It almost doesn't exist in the same sphere as all of the other movies we've ever watched for this podcast. It just kind of exists in its own thing. And honestly, if you had just placed a placeholder movie in here instead of Spinal Tap and we just crowned Spinal Tap the most quirky movie of all time, I think I would be okay with that.
Interesting. Brad, I'm going to do something we've never done on this podcast before.
Okay.
I'm going to give you an option to swap this movie with a different film. And we will just completely take Spinal Tap off of the bracket if you so choose here. And that would be a movie that we watched for a bonus episode this season, which just came out this past year. And I wanted to try to find a place to put it on this list. And that would be Hamilton, a movie that you gave, I believe, a 9 to, and I gave a 9.5 to. So giving it an overall number 10 ranking, I actually think would be pretty appropriate given how we rank movies here. So if you wanted to do so, we could flip-flop This Is Spinal Tap for Hamilton right now.
I'm in, Bob. Let's do it. As long as you're okay with saying that Spinal Tap is the most perfectly quirky movie of all time, and you have to like post that on Instagram somewhere.
I'm fine with that.
Let it be known to the world. Okay, because I don't want our audience to misunderstand me. I love Spinal Tap. It's a great movie. I think when I was making my list, I just kind of kept putting movies above it where I was like, well, this movie has to be above it, until I got to a point where I couldn't say that anymore. I was like, okay, this is where it'll go.
Well, I'm assuming that you had moved Braveheart on over Spinal Tap. Is that correct?
Oh, well, yeah, 100%.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't think Braveheart's that good. And I was shocked to see that this time around because I remember loving this movie growing up. And this time around, I think I gave it a 7. Like, it was just very, very cliched and heavy-handed. And so I had definitely moved This Is Spinal Tap over it. And I also have no problem now moving Hamilton on over Braveheart. Brad, now that you see Hamilton up against Braveheart, does that change your opinion any?
That, honestly, that makes it a really tough matchup. And just kind of off the cuff, without giving much thought to it, I think Hamilton is a really great movie. And I'm not going to act like the Academy and pretend like it doesn't exist as a movie. Like it very clearly is a movie. So with that in mind, I just still really, 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 really love Braveheart. And I know that I gave it an 8.5 or maybe a 9, I think, when we scored it. So it's hard. It's in the same range as Hamilton for me. I think I'm going to stick with Braveheart, Bob. It's been with me for longer. It's meant a lot to me throughout the years. It's my wife's favorite movie. I think I'm sticking with Braveheart here.
All right, Brad. Well, that means we have to flip a coin. And I'm really hoping that we are able to knock Braveheart out of existence because I just think Hamilton is that much better. But I also am the one holding the coin right now. So we're going to give heads to Hamilton and tails to Braveheart. Here we go. Oh, Brad, I won it this time. Hamilton moves on over Braveheart to our round of 16. I am really interested to see how we portray this to our listeners because, as you guys know, we leak the bracket a week in advance. But the bracket has This Is Spinal Tap, and we are just winging it and throwing in a movie that's not even on the bracket. So
we're doing it live.
I'll tell you what, man. Hamilton is in the Sweet 16, and it will be facing off against the winner of Double Indemnity, our number 7 seed, or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the number 26 seed. I don't need to discuss this. Double Indemnity, vastly superior. It moves on for me.
Yeah, I'm throwing it ahead too. Charlie's mom can sing a sad song.
Cheer
again
up, Charlie, because you're going to be thrown into the fiery abyss.
Which probably happened at some point in his tenure as the owner of Willy Wonka Chocolates.
Oh, yeah, for sure. All right, Brad, so those are our 4 entries into the Sweet 16 from this quadrant. Citizen Kane, Shutter Island, Hamilton, and Double Indemnity. And that takes us to our final quadrant, where we have the number 3 seed, Coco, up against the African Queen, the number 30 seed. I was really surprised to see that the African Queen was as bad of a movie as it is. And that's not even to say that it's a bad movie. I just expected it to hold up like I remembered it being when I was a kid. And it definitely didn't. It was way overwrought. And I just, there's no comparison between Coco and the African Queen for me.
Coco is one of Pixar's greatest movies, and they have some phenomenal ones. So yeah, Coco's an easy choice here.
All right, Brad, this is where you're going to get pissed off at me again, because we've got the number 14 overall seed, Return of the Jedi, up against the number 19 overall seed, Brokeback Mountain. Which, before you decide to stump for Return of the Jedi, I will say, both of us really, really liked and really enjoyed Brokeback Mountain. And I know that your heart says Return of the Jedi. I would just like to hear you say something nice about Brokeback Mountain before you launch into your Star Wars-based rant.
Bob, I really did like Brokeback Mountain. It's not my favorite movie out there, but I think that the human drama that you see in that movie is just so artfully examined and thoughtfully portrayed that it really is a beautiful movie. But it ain't beating out Return of the Jedi. Are you crazy?
Let me ask you this, Brad. If Star Wars wasn't your franchise, do you know what I mean? Like, some people are huge Star Trek people. Like, I know you like Lord of the Rings a lot. I know that you like Harry Potter a lot, but Star Wars seems to be the most near and dear to your heart of any major franchise out there. And you have basically agreed with me that it's Empire, and then the other two can kind of fight for the scraps when it comes to the original trilogy. And based on what even our audience has said with our final score posts that we made on social media, most people think Return of the Jedi is the worst of the three. I don't think that, but most people do. And I think that like a 7.5 rating is pretty in line with what people would rank it. I think we ended up averaging out to an 8.5 on that movie. Brad, I'm really surprised to hear how close to perfect you still think Return of the Jedi is.
I mean, Return has a lot of issues with its pacing, but where it really matters, its characters, they are developed beautifully. You get to see them interact in ways that you didn't in the other movies. And in the end, you get to see this vast, strange, and interesting galaxy interact with each other in fun ways once again. I still just love Return of the Jedi. I think my frustration with Star Wars is there's so much going on in the world of Star Wars and Disney and how they purchased it and all this stuff happening that, like, it's pretty much universally agreed that it's just always like shunned to the side. Oh yeah, the original Star Wars are great. Moving on. Like, what's Disney doing? What's the sequels doing?
Yeah.
And so for me, I just feel like this is an opportunity to point back and say, no, like, these movies are iconic for a reason. They are some of the most important films in cinematic history for a reason. And I just love them. And another part of it is the fact that you just, and Bob, I'm not going to say that you just trash on them.
And I don't, Brad. Like, let's be honest here. Because I know that they're so near and dear to your heart.
But I don't know if you're entirely fair to them either.
Oh,
And so for me, I just come to it and I say, you know what? Like, this is something I'm passionate about. I love it. I love this franchise, and I'm gonna fight for it. I'm gonna defend it. So I don't know. I'm going on and on.
I actually, Brad, and I think that's a very admirable thing. And I don't fault you for wanting to fight for them. I think I just wanted to actually hear your impassioned defense of Return of the Jedi specifically, because that is the movie that I think people are most like, that one had some issues. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
yeah.
When I got your rankings back and I saw how high Return of the Jedi was ranked, I thought, oh, this could really end up doing some damage in our bracket if Brad advocates for it all the way to the end. So we're going to see what happens here, because I definitely picked Brokeback Mountain to move on here, and I know you picked Return of the Jedi, and you are the master of the coin flip on this one, Brad. So we'll give Return of the Jedi heads, and we'll give Brokeback Mountain tails. Brad, flip that coin.
Robert, Return of the Jedi is moving on.
I'm not surprised, but that's okay. So Return of the Jedi is moving on to the round of 16. Brad, we have just a couple more matchups here. The number 11 overall seed, Inception, up against the number 22 seed, Walk the Line. I think that we both acknowledge that Inception is a very silly movie in some ways, but it is also almost impeccably executed. I think Inception moves on here.
Yeah, it makes me sad. I ranked Walk the Line at 16. Like, I think it's the most perfect movie to kind of put in the middle of this year's season. Like, it's entertaining, it's fun, it's decently memorable, but not like super impactful. Great movie. But Inception just was a phenomenon. And even now, 10 years later, I still watch it and I just marvel at what Nolan was able to do in that film. So yeah, Inception's the right choice here.
And it will be facing off against the winner of Apollo 13, our number 6 seed, up against Straight Outta Compton, the 27 seed. Brad,
I think it's actually Straight Outta Houston versus Straight Outta Compton.
That's right. Straight out of the atmosphere. Brad, I mean, this is also a no contest for me. Apollo 13 is a movie that I really do want to advocate for, and a movie that we both said is essentially a perfect film that does not get its due. It is just, I don't know that I'd change a thing about it. I really love that movie. Apollo 13 wins easily in this round for me.
Bob, if there was a movie that I ranked that I thought you were going to just lambast me for, it was Apollo 13, because literally like moments after I sent it to you, I re-looked it over and I was like, the only movie I was like, ooh, I kind of ranked that low, didn't I?
You did.
Was Apollo 13. That one deserved to be higher for me. I don't know. I was just kind of just going by my gut and my heart, and I threw it in there, and I realized afterwards, I'm like, no, Apollo deserved like the 6 to 9 slot, not number 14.
Yeah, I didn't call you out on that one, Brad, because it still didn't put it too far down our rankings. But I'm glad to hear that Apollo 13 will be moving on into the Sweet 16. And so we have our bracket set for the Sweet 16. On this side, we've got Coco, Return of the Jedi, Inception, and Apollo 13 moving on. And Brad, it is time for us to try our second whiskey of the day, which is the Lucky 7 Jokester. What do you say?
Let's get to it.
All right, so if you've been listening to this episode so far, you know that we are trying our second whiskey from Lucky 7. This is their 6-year bourbon that they call the Jokester. Brad, we've had it poured out in front of us here. I'd like to know what you think about this one compared to the 12 on the nose.
This one smells a lot sweeter to me. And it has a little bit of a grainy, raw smell to it that I feel like you would only get in a 6-year if you just came off of drinking a 12-year. You know what I mean?
I'm not going to take guesses as to what distillery this was purchased from or who made this product, but this smells a whole lot like Jim Beam to me, Brad. Like it reminds me a lot of a whiskey we're going to have at the beginning of next season called Old Tub, which Jim Beam just made a national brand. It has that really distinct beam nut flavor on it, or scent on it, which, you know, it does carry some of that peanut buttery scent as well. So it might be something like a Heaven Hill, you know, which makes Henry McKenna. Who knows? But it definitely smacks me in the face quite a bit more than the 12 does in terms of the peanut butter kind of scent.
You know, Bob, this is decent. I'm not like blown away with it. Maybe it is the fact that I just had their higher, 12-year expression that I would imagine would be, they're more refined, something they put a little more time into.
Mm-hmm.
This one's fine. It's a little bit sweet. It's a little bit grainy. I feel like I'm picking up a decent amount of that corn.
Yeah, I'm with you, Brad. When it hit the tip of my tongue, it had this nice, beautiful, dark, sweet note to it that I thought was really going to carry over and be just velvety caramel all the way through. And it's not that at all. It actually has all of those sort of like tannin, oak notes that the 12-year did, but not as complex, not as well-rounded. It's a little bit spikier, I guess I would call it. And it does kind of turn bitter on the end for me in a way that kind of reminds me of, I don't know, I guess I would call it like herbal, herbaceous. It's kind of grassy. I was not picking up any of that on the nose. I really thought this would be sweet all the way through. And so it really changed pretty dramatically on my palate.
Yeah, it's a pretty good whiskey. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't ever get it or try it again. It just is a little bit less impressive than the Hold Up that we tried a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I really liked the Hold Up. If you can get your hands on a bottle of that 12-year, I would recommend it. I actually think these are both pretty good whiskeys. But that 12-year really, I mean, the age difference, and again, I don't know if it's exactly the same mash bill, the same product that's just been aged longer, or if they bought two completely different kinds of whiskey. But that 12-year, you can really tell that being in the barrel that long has matured it to a point that this 6-year just hasn't quite hit. All right, Brad, what do you say we get into our Sweet 16?
Bob, I'm not going to lie. Looking at this Sweet 16, this might be one of the most difficult Sweet 16s that we've ever had. There's a lot of just phenomenal movies here.
All right, and we're going to be starting with the number 1 seed, It's a Wonderful Life, up against The Social Network. Brad, I think this is where the luck for The Social Network runs out for me. It's just not as good of a movie as It's a Wonderful Life, and I don't really think there's an argument that I can make that would even be a little bit persuasive on that note.
Yeah, It's a Wonderful Life is a powerhouse here, and it is for a reason. It's a phenomenal, just classic of a movie that easily moves on past Social Network for me.
All right, well, that one was pretty easy. But here's a challenging one. Our number 9 film, Prisoner of Azkaban, up against the number 8 film, Psycho. Brad, I have a feeling that I might know where you're leaning on this one, and I think I might be leaning in the opposite direction. I think at the end of the day, The fact that I respect Prisoner of Azkaban, but don't ultimately love it, kind of did it in for me, and I moved Psycho on to the next round here.
Well, honestly, I kind of feel similarly about this matchup as I did about The Departed and The Social Network. You know, both of these movies are great, but they're going to get crushed by the juggernaut that is It's a Wonderful Life. So, you know, I definitely chose Prisoner to move on here. It's a movie that I love. You know, I didn't actually really watch any of the Harry Potter movies growing up. Not until I was later in my teenage years. I think Goblet of Fire was the first one that I saw. So having watched this as an adult, I just am fascinated by this movie. I think Cuarón just did a masterful job with it. And, you know, while you could say a lot of the same things about Psycho, Prisoner is just in a genre that I love a lot more, that fantasy adventure, and I like it better as a movie. So I picked it to move on.
All right, well, that means we have a coin flip here. And Brad, I have the coin of destiny. We're going to do heads, Prisoner of Azkaban, tails, Psycho. I'm going to flip the coin. Psycho is moving on to the next round, Brad. So we have an It's a Wonderful Life Psycho matchup. All right, moving down to the bottom of our bracket here, we've got the number 4 overall seed, Fellowship of the Ring, up against the 13 seed Sicario. Again, Brad, really great movie in Sicario, but it's just not quite in the same class as Fellowship of the Ring for me.
Yeah, I really, really loved Sicario. It was a great, great film. I thought it was such a phenomenal film coming down the home stretch of this season. But Fellowship just has such enduring magical quality that, you know, almost 20 years after it came out, the practical effects are still just spectacular. The dialogue is great. The way it's written, the way it's filmed is beautiful. I just love Fellowship of the Ring. I think it's pretty much a perfect movie. So I'm moving that one on.
All right, and it will be facing up against the winner of the 12 seed Die Hard against the number 5 overall seed North by Northwest. Again, Brad, not a difficult one for me. I don't know if it was for you. I like Die Hard a lot, but it's no North by Northwest.
Yeah, once again, you have a movie here where I am really curious to see John McClane go up against the villain of North by Northwest.
Yeah.
I just really want to see John McClane running around Mount Rushmore shooting, you know, random Russian or German bad guys off the top of the heads of presidents. This is just a mashup waiting to happen. But in the end, North by Northwest is a pretty easy winner here.
All right, and that means that the group of 8 will also feature the Fellowship of the Ring and North by Northwest. Brad, moving to the top right quadrant here, we've got a group of 16 matchup between Citizen Kane and Shutter Island. And again, Brad, like I feel like the favorites are just winning all over the place here, but it's Citizen Kane, man. Like I love Shutter Island, Kane. But it's Citizen Kane. Come on.
I will say, I'm pretty sure that once again, Charles Foster Kane probably was the man who put Leo on Shutter Island somehow. Like he just used his money and power and influence and got him banished off to this island.
So Citizen Kane moves on though?
Oh yeah, but yeah.
All right. Well, that means that we have the newcomer Hamilton, which somehow skipped a whole round and got right into the round of 16.
It just John Cena'd its way into this bracket.
Up against the number 7 seed Double Indemnity. Now, Brad, I will say this. This is actually harder for me than it would have been if Spinal Tap had been in here. Because I have listened to the Hamilton original cast recording, I think every day since we recorded that episode back in July. I am like a full-fledged fanatic of Hamilton. I think it might be the greatest artistic achievement of the last decade, like including film. It is like, I love Hamilton, but it's also really hard for me to put Double Indemnity out of its misery at this point. Too. I love Double Indemnity.
Here's my question. This is something I've never understood. I love musicals. Like, I have genuinely liked musicals since I was a kid. I grew up on things like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, My Fair Lady. So, I genuinely really, really like musicals. I have never understood why it has such a cult following of people who just nonstop listen, whether it's Rent or Hamilton or, you know, whatever the musical of the month is.
Sure.
Why do people listen nonstop to musical music. I've never understood that.
I like a good show tune here and there. With Hamilton, it's different to me because it works so well as an album unto it's because the whole show is music, right? So like it tells a self-contained story. But every time I listen, I find more and more nuance, whether it's in the instrumentation. Today, I was listening to one of the songs that I don't typically listen to a lot, and I really realized that from one verse to the next, there's like complete symmetry between the verses. They basically repeat the exact same kind of lines, but they change the meaning each time. And it was something that like, I've listened to this album 50 times probably. And for me, it's become more of like a favorite album than it is, I like the musical, so I'm going to listen to the songs. If that makes sense. It's more like listening to the White Album for me now than it is like throwing on the soundtrack to Rent.
So what you're saying is, in general, you're not that person who just listens to La La Land over and over.
No, not at all.
Hamilton has really captured you.
It has. And so that's what's made this a difficult thing. I think at the end of the day, I do want to choose Double Indemnity to move on here because, and again, like you said, we don't want to be the snobs in the room about like, it's not a real movie. But I think what I love about Hamilton is that it is I love the Broadway musical Hamilton. I don't know that I am head over heels about the filmed version of that Broadway musical. Whereas Double Indemnity is a film that there's no other iteration of that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Bob. And I'll give a shout out to all you theater nerds out there. If you want to tell us why you love listening to musical soundtracks over and over and over, let us know, because I am genuinely curious. But as far as this bracket goes, Double Indemnity is a pretty simple choice for me here. It's a great film. It's intriguing. It's just, like, when I think about a classic movie, Double Indemnity just fits every single box. It's a great film. It moves on.
We have come to the most difficult matchup that I think we're going to have in this entire bracket. And I am ready to throw down and fight you. Because we have the number 3 overall seed, Coco, up against the number 14 seed, Return of the Jedi. And I didn't know what was going to win my bracket until I got to Coco against Return of the Jedi. And I realized, oh man, I don't know if I can pick anything over Coco because it has that much of my heart now. And Return of the Jedi was no match for it, for me. And I have a feeling that this is going to come down to a coin flip. And if it does, I will be pretty livid.
Bob, I love Coco.
No, don't do this, Brad.
My soul.
Don't do this.
It's a beautiful film. The art style is fantastic. The physical humor in the movie is amazing. Like, it's just a great, phenomenal, amazing Pixar movie. But Return of the Jedi has my soul. I love that movie. I love the ending of it. I just have a hard time picking against a movie that I just love so dearly, and I genuinely think is a really well-made movie. So that has issues.
Let me say this, all right? Like, you don't need any more justification other than, like, it has your heart, because that's my reason for picking Coco here, right? Like, it has my heart.
Yeah.
However, I would also say that in addition to having my heart, I think Coco is also the objectively better movie. So just for argument's sake, Brad, do you also think that Return of the Jedi is the objectively better movie, or would you say you think Coco is the better film?
Man, I will say that's a hard one for me because the movies are just they're just from different eras, they're different mediums. Like, animation is just vastly different than live action. I just have a really hard time comparing two movies that are just so vastly on different planes. I think that Coco has certain merits that are probably better than Return of the Jedi, but I think that Return of the Jedi hits story beats in a better fashion than Coco does.
Wow.
I think that by the end of Return of the Jedi, and it's hard because you can't factor out Empire, the story at the very least of Empire and A New Hope with this. Like, Coco is a self-contained universe, whereas Star Wars at the point that, Return came out was not a self-contained universe. There was 3 movies and a lot of books at that point. And so, just within the movies, seeing the story of Star Wars come to a close as well as it does, you just can't beat that for me.
All right. Well, that means that we are coming down to a coin flip, Brad, and I think it is your turn to flip, which means that
All right.
I have immediate suspicions about the outcome of this, but
I will say I get legitimately offended when you tell me that I cheat on these coin flips, because I am not going to go against the coin of destiny.
All right. So Coco's heads, Return of the Jedi is tails. Brad, flip that coin. Now, you.
The coin of destiny has chosen Robert.
The coin of destiny.
The coin of destiny has chosen Coco to move on into the fiery furnace.
Into the fiery furnace? You said move. Oh, that was the that was the most misleading thing you've ever done. Brad, I have
Bob,
not
do you
felt,
feel worse about this or Casablanca?
I have not felt this passionately about a movie in all 3 seasons. I did not. Coco might be one of my favorite movies of all time, and I'm just now realizing that. I think the blow was softened when Casablanca got knocked out by Star Wars, like episode 4, because I knew how much it meant to you. But at this point, I'm like, no, like Return of the Jedi does not mean that much to you compared to the other 2, and you know it. Brad, I had Coco winning my bracket. I had Coco beating Citizen Kane, and now it's gone, and it's because of you. And I hope you're happy. Oh, I'm so
Bob,
upset.
All I have to say is that it is not because of me. It is because of the coin of destiny.
Yeah, okay.
The coin of destiny has chosen. I believe it's a little bit of revenge for the last 2 seasons of just knocking the heck out of,
I swear to God, if
the
Return of
Star
the
Wars franchise.
Jedi, if Return of the Jedi wins this bracket, I'm going to quit this podcast. Let's take the objectively 3rd best Star Wars movie and crown it the champion here. All right, we have one more matchup, which will undoubtedly result in a coin flip in the next round when it faces Return of the Jedi, and that is Inception against Apollo 13. Brad, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this because, I think Apollo 13 is like a perfect movie, and as much as I love Inception, and as much as like I probably watch Inception more, I think Apollo 13 is the better movie. And I think at the end of the day, I'd rather have Apollo 13 in the world than Inception. And I chose Apollo 13 to move on.
Oh, see, that's an interesting qualifier. A movie that I would rather have in the world.
Well, I mean, that's like the corollary of, the other one gets destroyed. So
no, you're right. You're right. I guess I was thinking about this selfishly. Like, what movies do I not want to see in the fiery furnace versus what movies does the world need? And so with that in mind, I actually think...
You're about to throw me a bone because you feel bad about Coco. Don't do this.
No, I'm actually about to pick Inception, bro.
Wow.
I actually think that the world needs Inception more than it needs Apollo 13. I think Apollo 13 is a pinnacle of the genre of like historical drama, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Inception is just so fantastically different of a movie that kind of expands the boundaries while not going too wild with it, a la Interstellar, that like Inception is just the most perfectly courageous movie at pushing limits, pushing boundaries, having phenomenal acting performances. I really think Inception is the movie that I pick here.
All right, well, that means that it's time for one more coin flip before we get out of here. So Inception is going to be heads, Apollo 13 will be tails. Let's pick something to go into the fiery furnace, Brad. And as I flip the coin, it comes up tails. Apollo 13 moves on to our round of 8 to face off against Return of the Jedi, where I will undoubtedly pick Apollo 13, and it will result in a coin flip. So, folks, we have our group of 8 set. The final 8 films in our bracket are It's a Wonderful Life, Psycho, The Fellowship of the Ring, North by Northwest, Citizen Kane, Double Indemnity, Return of the Jedi, and Apollo 13. Brad, I cannot wait to whittle this down and choose our champion of season 3. We'll be back later this week to finish this out for our season finale, and we'll be handing out some of our season-ending awards as well. So please join us for that this Thursday. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.